Resign. On the screen, I've got figure 6 from the 2012 IG report showing most frequently used addresses for I-10 tax refunds. As you can see, nearly 24,000 tax refunds totaling $46.4 million were issued to the same address in Atlanta, Georgia. Bottom line, these items, I-10s, are costing taxpayers dearly because they can be used to fraudulently get tax refunds. And last month, the IG issued another report that makes it clear the IRS could be doing a better job protecting taxpayer dollars. Just look at the figure on the screen. Over 1,000 I-10s were assigned to individuals using the same address in Atlanta, Georgia. Do you agree there's still a problem or not? Yes or no?
I do agree there's still a problem. Yeah.
Also, the IG found the IRS workers handling the I-10 applications remain concerned that management will basically pressure them to rubber stamp applications instead of ensuring that only qualified individuals receive. Can you give us assurance that the IRS management won't do this anymore?
I need to look further into that allegation, but on its face, it sounds like something that's inappropriate, and I'll work with the team.
Let me just say in closing, your own report acknowledges the tax code is nearly impossible to administer because it's so complex, and based on the billions in improper payments being made with refundable credits, I'll just say your agency is proving you right every day, and it's time for the IRS to stop targeting Americans and start targeting fraud. I yield back.
$14 million of taxpayer money has already been spent on this investigation.
Called out the Supreme Court regarding the Citizens United decision. That same year, 2010, the president numerous times talked about Tea Party groups as shadowy groups who would hurt our democracy. That same year, Senator Schumer says we're going to get to the bottom of this, encourage the IRS to investigate. Senator Baucus, that same year, asked the IRS to investigate C4 applications and C4 groups. Senator Durbin asked the IRS to investigate Crossroads GPS. And then, in that same year, 2010, 2 weeks before the election, October 19th, at Duke University, Lois Lerner gives a speech. And she says this: the Supreme Court dealt a huge blow in the Citizens United decision. And everyone is up in arms because they don't like it. They want the IRS to fix the problem. The IRS laws are not set up to fix the problem. C4s can do straight political activity. So everybody is screaming at us right now. Who's everybody? Everybody is not everybody. Everybody is the president and Democrat senators who ask her to do something. Fix it now before the election. Lois Lerner says, I can't do anything right now. She couldn't fix it before the 2010 midterm election, but what she could do is start a project to deal with it in the future, and that's exactly what she did. That same fall, she sent an email, again, just weeks before the midterm election. Lerner tells her colleagues, let's do a C4 project next year. But she also says we need to be cautious so it isn't a per se political project. In fact, the chairman put this email up in our last hearing. Per se political project means that's code for it is a political project. We just have to make it look like it's not a political project. Then in early 2011, Lois Lerner orders the multi-tiered review of C4 applications. Multi-tiered review, you know what that is? That's code for we're going to delay, we're going to harass, we're never going to approve these people, we're going to make it difficult. That's part of the C4 project. And then make no mistake, she put Washington in charge. This email is also one that the chairman put up at our last meeting, where Lois Lerner said this in February of 2011. Tea Party matter, very dangerous. Cincy should probably not have these cases. So this narrative about Cincinnati line agents in Cincinnati doing this is completely false. She ordered them not to have these cases. And then what happened? Lois Lerner got caught with her hand in the cookie jar. Tea Party groups came to us and said, we're being harassed. We asked for the Inspector General to do an investigation. He did the audit, and then before he can release the audit, unprecedented, before he releases the audit, Lois Lerner, in a speech in front of the Bar Association here in this town, with a plaintive question from a friend, reveals that, yes, targeting was taking place. And what'd she do? She throws the Cincinnati people under the bus. The very people she said shouldn't have the cases, she throws them, good civil servants, she throws them under the bus. And here's the real kicker. Lois Lerner, who did this project from the pressure from the president and Democrat senators who did this project, she won't talk to us. She won't talk to us, and our witness today won't give us her emails, even though we subpoenaed them over 6 months ago. That's what, Mr. Chairman, Lois Lerner won't talk to us. She'll talk to the Justice Department because she knows that investigation. She'll talk to the people who can put her in jail, but she won't talk to us, and the guy who can give us the emails won't give us the emails. And here's why today's hearing is so important. The C4 rule that's being proposed, that got 149,000 comments, would codify what Lois Lerner put into practice, would in fact accomplish the goal that she set out to do in 2010.
It seems to me that we've spent $14 million up to this point investigating this one issue. And while I think the investigations are designed to tell us something we don't know, we have not learned anything new.
Chairman asked you if you'd spoken to a number of people in the process of your investigation. Former IRS Commissioner Schulman, you said no. Former acting IRS Commissioner Mr. Miller, you said no. And then Sarah Hall Ingram, you said yes. Who is she?
Sarah Hall Ingram runs the Affordable Care Act operations within the IRS, and I speak to her on an ongoing basis as part of my responsibility to engage with my senior leadership team on the ongoing operations of the IRS.
What was her role during this period of time, during the period of time in the tax exempt?
It's a good question, and that's one that we're looking at, and I'll do my best to explain it right now. Ms. Ingram was the commissioner of the tax-exempt government entities organization leading into when these events occurred. So the IG report starts to surface issues in and around early, let's say March 2010 is when this fact pattern begins on the IG timeline. It's my understanding that Ms. Ingram served as the commissioner of tax-exempt, government-exempt organizations, which is a level above the exempt organizations unit, and that org chart is in my report. And she served in that capacity until somewhere around the spring or summer of 2010.
So there was an overlap.
So there's an overlap. At that point in time, she moved over and was detailed over to begin her work in running the Affordable Care Act.
That same nonpartisan inspector general testified, and I quote, "The IRS's existing fraud detection systems may not be capable of identifying ACA, or healthcare refund or fraud schemes, prior to the issuance of the tax refunds," end quote.
What took place was outrageous and unacceptable, and the President of the United States says what took place is inexcusable. June of last year, in front of the Judiciary Committee, we had then FBI Director Mueller in front of the committee. We asked him 3 simple questions. Who's the lead agent? How many agents have you assigned to the case? And have you talked to any of the victims? A month into this was the biggest story in the country at the time. And the FBI Director's response was, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. 7 written inquiries to Justice saying, can you tell us some basics about the investigation? Who is in fact leading it? Is it truly Barbara Bosserman as we believe? Everyone tells us the witnesses we've interviewed said she's leading the investigation. How many agents have you signed? Have you talked to? 7 different inquiries, no response from the Department of Justice. January 13th, as I said earlier, of this year, FBI leaks to the Wall Street Journal, no one's going to be referred for prosecution. February, the president says no corruption, not even a smidgen. And we learn Barbara Bosserman, a max-out contributor to the president's campaign, is leading the investigation. Now, take that fact pattern and apply it to the elements that the Attorney General looks at when you're deciding if you're going to have a special prosecutor. As the chairman pointed out in his opening statement, 3 elements. The Code of Federal Regulations requires the AG to appoint a special counsel when he determines these 3 things. 1, that a criminal investigation of a person or matter is warranted. Well, of course it's warranted. The AG already said it was. This is a big matter. This is a violation of people's First Amendment rights. And the Ways and Means Committee has already said Ms. Bosserman should be referred for prosecution. Second element, that investigation by the United States Attorney's Office or litigating division of the Department of Justice would present a conflict of interest for the department. If we don't have a conflict of interest here, I don't know where we do. The president has prejudged the outcome. The FBI has leaked to the Wall Street Journal. No one's going to be prosecuted, prejudged the outcome. And the lead investigator is a max-out contributor to the DNC and the president's campaign. And finally, the third element. It would be in the public interest to appoint an outside special counsel. So the real question, frankly, I would think the Attorney General would want this. There are all kinds of Americans who think this thing is not being done in an impartial and fair manner. I would think the Attorney General would want, pick someone who's above reproach. Pick someone that everyone agrees is going to do a fair job. Why have this cloud hanging over the investigation that the person leading it gave $6,750 to the president's campaign? That's all this asks. This should be something the administration should want to do, because it clears up in people's minds all across this country that we're going to get to the truth and we're going to have a real investigation. And never forget what took place here. This is so important. People's most fundamental right, your right to speak out, in a First Amendment right to speak out against your government, was targeted. That's why we need to get to the truth, and that's why we need a special counsel who will do a real investigation. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio yields back. The gentleman from Virginia reserved. Gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I think it is important to state that one of the provisions that's not in the regulations establishing a special counsel, it is not a get-you procedure. It's not a got-you procedure. It follows an orderly process of which the Department of Justice is engaged in.
$14 million. $14 million in taxpayer money has been spent by the IRS responding to congressional investigations.
A year ago, when news broke that the IRS had been targeting Americans based on their political beliefs, the President of the United States said it was outrageous. He said, "We demand full accountability." Attorney General Eric Holder said it was, quote, outrageous and unacceptable. And so everybody agreed this was serious. Everybody agreed that this required a serious investigation. As we sit here a year later, it's clear that we have not seen the action that we were promised. I mean, first of all, the Department of Justice had been discussing with the IRS as late as May of 2013 the possibility that some of these groups who had been targeted could end up being prosecuted criminally. And so the DOJ actually had a role with the IRS. We know that the investigation is being led by somebody who was a big contributor to President Obama's re-election campaign. Of course, the president at the Super Bowl earlier this year, he said that the investigation was essentially over. Nothing happened, he said. No, not even a smidgen of impropriety. And of course, the Department of Justice has leaked to the media that no prosecutions will in fact occur. And when the president said, as a senator in 2006, that the highly political context of the allegations and charges may lead some to surmise that political influence may compromise the investigation because this investigation is vital to restoring the public's faith in government, any appearance of bias, special favor, or political consideration would be a further blow to our democracy. When he said that, that quote basically applies to what we have now. I mean, the American people, one, they don't want their government targeting them and targeting their First Amendment rights. And if that's done, powers abused, they need to be held accountable. But when this is all said and done, I think the American people want to have confidence that this was looked at in a fair manner. And when you have all these political considerations swirling around, I don't think many Americans have confidence that the Department of Justice is doing this in a way that's not conflicted. And don't forget, the entire context of this whole scandal was targeting essentially the president's political opposition in the run-up to his re-election campaign. So I'm proud to stand here supporting this resolution. I think voting yes on it is voting yes for transparency and accountability in government, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Virginia reserves. The time remaining, the gentleman from Virginia controls 4 minutes. Gentlelady from Texas controls 6.5. Gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Thank you very much. Let me just say very quickly that the entire premise of the gentleman's comments have been proven absolutely wrong. 39 witnesses never said one moment that the presidential election of that time of 2012 was any way involved in this particular issue. In addition, this is a bipartisan investigation because we have the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration is appointed by a Republican and is a Republican working with the Department of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say to the ranking member, sounds like his understanding is correct, and I would hope we do the same with, I don't know, the IG, Mr. Russell George. I'd like to see all of his overt partisan political emails. I'd like to see if he's emailed relatives, if he's emailed staff members of this committee. I think that would be relevant to putting in context his findings.
Considered Tea Parties were provided to TikTok last week on July 9th, 2013. They were not provided during our audit, even though similar documents that quote Tea Party, unquote, but not progressive were. I am very disturbed that these documents were not provided to our auditors at the outset, and we are currently reviewing this issue.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And while I would very much like to answer the committee's questions today, I've been advised by my counsel to assert my constitutional right not to testify or answer questions related to the subject matter of this hearing. After very careful consideration, I've decided to follow my counsel's advice and not testify or answer any of the questions today. Because I'm asserting my right not to testify, I know that some people will assume that I've done something wrong.